In recent years, illegal migrants committing crimes as serious as murder have been given legal sanctuary by progressive politicians. Now those same politicians are learning that their policy choice could well have them facing capital punishment as America finally acts in self-defense of its national borders. Surprised? Shocked? Hoping for public broadcast? Let me walk you through it. I am, of course, attorney Andrew Branca at Law of Self-Defense. And for those of you who stay to the end, and I surely hope that's all of you, I'll share with you how you can join us for our 100% free Law of Self-Defense Hard to Convict class coming up shortly. So sanctuary cities and states that shelter illegal migrants from law enforcement have been a real thing in America for many years now. Under these policies, the relevant jurisdiction simply refuses to comply with federal immigration laws or federal efforts to enforce those laws. In general, the local politicians, the local law enforcement they control, and the local criminal courts all act in open defiance of the nation's immigration law and enforcement. One result is that illegal migrants who violate criminal law, including when committing crimes as serious as murder, are not reported to or held for federal immigration authorities. Indeed, often their criminal conduct is downgraded from felony to misdemeanor charges or even dismissed entirely, simply to facilitate the ability to hide these violent illegal migrants from federal law enforcement. A major consequence of this is that illegal migrants committing even the most violent and contemptible crimes are not only not held accountable for their criminal immigration status, they're also not held accountable for their violent crimes at all. Instead, they are simply released back into the community to offend and reoffend again at their leisure, after which they are yet again not held accountable. Of course, all of this lack of accountability applies not merely to crimes as serious as murder, but every lesser degree offense as well. In my local city of Denver, for example, the police have formally announced they are no longer enforcing traffic offenses such as lack of a driver's license, lack of insurance, lack of registration, or even lack of license plates on vehicles, all because such offenses tend to be concentrated among the illegal migrant community. As a result, there are literally thousands of cars being operated in Denver with no license plates and no insurance. Get hit by one of those vehicles and you're simply out of luck. This is the same Denver in which Venezuelan criminal gangs illegally in the nation have forcibly taken over command of numerous apartment complexes and begun extorting rent payments from residents under threat of physical violence, including AR rifle armed rent collectors. Car theft has also exploded across the city since the massive influx of illegal migrants began, thefts mostly having destructive effect on the lower middle-class residents who park their cars exposed to theft on public streets. Indeed, these illegal migrants are increasingly targeting as victims American citizens even in their most protected places, their very homes. We don't see the progressive U.S. media reporting on this much, but the overseas media is less inhibited, such as this reporting by the UK-based Daily Mail. The headline here reads, "How terrifying migrant gangs are targeting America's homes, and yours may be next." There's also good reason to believe that these illegal migrants are participating in the widespread voter fraud common to the sanctuary cities and states, which also, not coincidentally, tend to be the same jurisdictions that do not require government ID or proof of American citizenship in order to cast a ballot. In the midst of all this chaos, so far there's been nothing but upside for the politicians adopting these illegal migrant sanctuary policies, both political upside and financial upside. Politically, these illegal migrants become effective constituents, likely to support the sanctuary politicians in their campaigns. Financially, much of the money spent on illegal migrants appears to function as a giant money laundering operation, diverting vast sums of public wealth into the hands of favored political supporters. Denver, for example, has spent about $360 million on illegal migrants in just the last year, with much of that money being favored to progressive teachers in their unions who serve as activists for these sanctuary politicians, as well as to wealthy hotel entrepreneurs who profit richly off providing the city with migrant hotel facilities, many of whom have been generous donors to the campaigns of these same sanctuary politicians. At the same time, the political and financial downside for these sanctuary politicians has been non-existent, at least for the politicians, even as their communities suffer massive cutbacks in local services and vast increases in crimes, both violent and destructive of quality of life. And of course, this crisis has reached previously unimaginable proportions under the current regime of President Biden. Here's a chart illustrating detected but uncaptured illegal migrants entering the U.S. Look at that spike during the Biden-Harris administration. According to Wall Street Journal reporting, since 2021, only 3 years ago, roughly 10 million people have immigrated into the U.S. since Biden was elected president, with more than two-thirds of them, or roughly 7 million, being demonstrably illegal migrants. And I would suggest that's an underestimate by at least half. But the good news, it looks like that's about to change, thanks to President-elect Donald Trump having selected Tom Homan to be his border czar and in charge of the mass deportation of illegal migrants out of the United States. Homan is a fierce and vocal defender of America's borders and a former immigration official who has demonstrated a high degree of expertise in the legal dynamics around immigration and more particularly around deportation. Homan has publicly urged illegal migrants to start packing now, and has recently announced that on the day that Trump is sworn in as president, January 20th, 2025, illegal migrants will find that the free cell phones the U.S. government earlier provided them will stop working, as will the government-issued EBT cards by which American taxpayer money has been funneled to these illegal migrants. Homan has also been educating sanctuary politicians of a very real legal consequence they are risking through their sanctuary policies, and quite explicitly on social media platform X. A recent post of his reads, "From New York to Massachusetts to California, a bunch of politicians are about to become felons, and it's going to be glorious to watch all the anti-American garbage get arrested." Review Title 8, U.S. Code 1324. It's a felony to harbor illegal aliens. And in fact, among those legal consequences to which those sanctuary politicians are exposing themselves is the possibility of capital punishment, quite literally a firing squad. Homan mentioned 8 U.S.C. 1324 in his X post, so let's take a closer look at that provision of federal law. The harboring of illegal immigrants is a federal felony under 8 U.S.C. 1324. Similarly, being an accessory to this crime or conspiring to commit this crime is effectively not legally any different from committing the crime itself and carries the same penalty. And what is the penalty prescribed by 1324 for harboring illegal aliens? Well, as part of our commitment to the law of self-defense community, we base what we teach on actual law. So let's go ahead and take a look at the actual federal law. First, let's take a look at the conduct that makes one subject to the penalties of 8 U.S.C. 1324. The first is alien smuggling. That is, bringing an illegal migrant into the United States other than through a port of entry and lawfully. The second type of conduct is domestic transporting. Once that illegal migrant is in the U.S., transporting or moving them around the U.S. The third form of conduct is harboring. That is, harboring or sheltering, concealing an illegal migrant from law enforcement. The fourth kind of conduct is encouraging or inducing someone to illegally enter the United States. And this all applies to not just doing those things, but also engaging in any conspiracy to commit any of those acts or to aid or abet the commission of any of those acts. And what's the punishment for having committed any of those forms of illegal migrant conduct? Well, it is described in the next paragraph of 1324. A person who is engaged in alien smuggling, that is, bringing an illegal migrant into the country for purposes of commercial advantage or private financial gain, can be imprisoned for up to 10 years. If they smuggle them in not for personal gain, well, they can still be imprisoned for up to 5 years. In the case of any form of conduct in which that illegal migrant, and this includes the harboring conduct, in which that illegal migrant causes serious bodily injury to someone or places them in jeopardy of serious bodily injury, well, then the sentence goes up to 20 years. And if somebody engages in harboring, sheltering of an illegal migrant who causes the death of an American citizen, that's punishable by death or imprisonment for any term of years, including life in prison. So focusing on that last provision in particular, where the penalty for having sheltered, harbored an illegal migrant who causes death, there are literally tens of thousands of illegal migrants being sheltered by the active policies of progressive sanctuary politicians in each of the sanctuary cities and states, and it is demonstrably the case that some of these harbored illegal migrants in each jurisdiction have caused death. They've committed murder. And that, folks, opens up those sanctuary politicians to punishment by death, capital punishment, firing squad for each of those illegal migrants who committed a murder. And I suspect that many of these sanctuary city politicians are suddenly being made aware of their legal jeopardy. How do we know? Well, only days ago, Sanctuary Mayor Mike Johnston in Denver vowed to have 50,000 local law enforcement officers at the county border to defy, by force, federal efforts to deport illegal migrants, attesting that he was also willing to suffer the criminal legal consequences of engaging in this kind of resistance to federal immigration authorities. But then suddenly, a few days later, what did he do? He walked back that aggressive stance and his willingness to incur the criminal threat. Didn't really mean it, fellas, spoke in haste. Similarly, New York Governor Kathy Hochul had in previous years proudly proclaimed New York State as a sanctuary state, spending vast fortunes of taxpayer money to house and educate illegal migrants, as well as adopting policies to shield those same illegal migrants from federal immigration authorities, no matter what crimes they committed. Just days ago, however, that same Governor Hochul abruptly claimed that now she would be the first person to call federal immigration authorities on any illegal migrant committing a crime. Of course, it goes without saying that every illegal migrant present in the U.S. is by definition committing a crime merely by their illegal presence. There seems to be good reason to believe that the third world invasion of the United States by migrants illegally swarming over our borders, with the aggressive political and financial support of many American politicians, may soon be facing its first substantial resistance in many years. And that's a good thing. As for my own personal view on the matter, all the migrants must go home now. And to the many sanctuary politicians who may finally find themselves facing the potentially lethal music for their unlawful migrant sanctuary activities, well, as you progressives have loved reminding the rest of us regular Americans as far back as COVID, no one is above the law, and that includes you.